Mitch, you talked a lot about principles around being sort of stuck in a box, and these were generating a lot of thoughts. We could see a lot of heads nodding. I'm wondering if you can tie that directly for us to the consumer goods supply chain, which is where a lot of folks in the room are really focused these days, trying to make it more sustainable.
I know that every organization needs to have their ducks in a row, especially in supply chain. There are protocols, there are processes, there are handoffs, there's moments of truth, and those are enablers when they're done well. When people become habituated to them and unable to be spontaneous and improv and adapt and adjust to the real need in the real moment with whomever they are in communication with, then you get kind of a simulation of the relationship, but it's not really, it's not empowered, it's not engaged. There's something missing. That X factor, the mojo, the feeling is lost, and the humanity goes out of the equation. Innovation and true communication is driven by two people being present with each other. But when we have such a pathway already embedded in our brains of like, this is how we do things, then people start to lose that moment of truth, and then, in my experience, the relationship decays or erodes.
And again, just thinking of the whole being stuck in the box and the cliche around that you're really deconstructing. And you talked about the 6 sides of the box and how each side you could apply a different concern, a different name to it. Is there one or two of those 6 sides that really stand out for you as a dominant challenge for the supply chain professionals or the sustainability folks that you're speaking with today?
Yeah, one would be assumptions, limiting assumptions. Assumptions that the person has about the other person, about what they're interested, about what they assume is fair game to discuss, about what kinds of insights or ideas that they could pose, they could present, but they've already assuming that that person would be objecting to it, and so they censor themselves. And so what you get is not a 3-dimensional relationship, you get a 2-dimensional relationship. The box becomes flattened, it doesn't even have any dimensionality to it.
And one of the sides you mentioned specifically was mental clutter. So what about mental clutter?
We all have our computers in our pocket, and these computers are connected to everything, and we're getting buzzed, beeped, chirped, vibrated, seems like every second of the day, and distracted and fragmented. And in those moments when we succumb to that confluence of input and data and concepts and information, there's like nothing left to be spontaneous and to be in the moment with the person.
So you really got a lot of us thinking today about some of the principles we can bring into our workplace. And the conversation was very much looking at people who are working in organizations, how to make change, how to really advance ideas. I couldn't help but notice, even though there were lots of people nodding and appreciating what you were saying, that there might have been a sense of unrest of how do I really bring these principles into my workplace? In other words, and I'm being intentionally provocative here, why don't I just go back to my workplace and quit because I don't see these types of things moving forward?
Organizations bring with it a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of resources, a lot of great people that when you're in the right relationship to them, great things can happen. But if you're not in the right relationship with your own organization, it becomes depressing and compressing. So the individual has to define their right relationship to their organization such that they have maximum resources available to them, maximum room to move, but not burdened by the, as we all know, the dark side that organizations sometimes can manifest.
So how do you get a group of people on board within an organization to really move forward with these ideas, this creative destruction, these really very bold notions that you're talking about infusing into the workplace?
Here's what Picasso said. The act of creation begins, first of all, as an act of destruction. First, we have to let go of the old. In an organization, that's very confronting. People have spent years building something, and now they get familiar with it. Now they finally understand what they're doing. And then something comes along, a climate change, a change to the industry, a change in technology, something in the economy, and then all bets are off. And people are faced like, oh my God, I mean, we have to start back at ground zero? We have to start again? most people can't stand that moment because they just really want a job. Change, transformation, requires a kind of a courage, a kind of a resiliency, a kind of tenacity, a kind of willingness to be a lifelong learner. Once you say yes to that, you are able to begin again at all times, instead of being in the mode of like, oh damn, and resign to this, here we go again, back to square one, as if it's bad. You look at it like, I have an opportunity now to create something new, and I actually have I have a hand in it.
Why do you think it's important for people to come together at an event like the Ethical Sourcing Forum that we're here for in New York today?
Well, because they have such great potential to make a huge difference on this planet. They're doing great work, they're committed, they're passionate, and they're subject to all of the phenomenon that we are very familiar with in any large organization or an economy or a confluence of organizations where bureaucracy and old patterns and old habits and less than ideal conditions exist. People at that point have two choices. They can either lose heart and become, take the path of least resistance and just sort of fit in and do the average, or they can leave, they could quit, that's another option, or they could choose in a great act of will and personal power to say, I accept this, I know this is not perfect, I can make a difference, and I will make a difference, and I'm coming here to this kind of forum with my ESF colleagues to share information, share insights, learn from each other, and reclaim the possibility that we can make a difference, even though it's not a perfect world, and even though our organizations are not ideal.
Thank you, Mitch.